video as well. Good. Thank you, Mr. Krebs. Either Mr. Fleming or Mr. Hartling on this one at all? No. I
don't believe our correct.
All right. This is in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Anton Thomas Krebs, file number 23-21639. FH. I have James Daly appearing on behalf of Mr. Krebs. Mr. Daly, we sent a pre-sentence report to on February 13th of 24. Have you had an opportunity to review that with Mr. Krebs?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Krebs, so you've had an opportunity to read and review the pre-sentence report?
Yes.
All right. And you've had an opportunity to discuss that report with your attorney?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with your attorney and the advice that he has given you?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Daly, do you wish to explain or challenge the accuracy or relevancy of any information in the pre-sentence report?
No, the only challenge we would have would be to OD-19, Your Honor. They gave him 15 points for that, and we don't believe it's appropriate on this case.
All right. Let me go get my guideline book. So let's go through my spiel so I don't get lost, Mr. Daly. So other than the guidelines, do you wish to explain or challenge the accuracy or relevancy of any other information in the pre-sentence report?
Right.
Does the pre-sentence report disclose any prior convictions in which there exists a known constitutional defect?
Right.
All right, so probation department. Let's see. We have 2 counts of assault of a prison employee and then 2 misdemeanor counts of assault and battery. So on assault of a prison employee, OB-19 is threat to security of penal institution or court or interference with the administration of justice or rendering of emergency services. Probation department scored 15 points. Stating that the offender used force or threat of force against another person or the property of another person to interfere with, attempt to interfere with, or that results in the interference with the administration of justice or the rendering of emergency services. So, Mr. Daly?
I have nothing else to add on that, Your Honor, other than we don't believe he did those things. When he's guilty of what he did, but we don't believe he interfered with the administration of justice to cause those kind of problems.
Okay, so let's look at the body of the report again. All right. So right, so there's the allegation that deputy arrived on scene, attempted to move the defendant away from the crowd, and he was being very belligerent, according to the officer. The defendant was screaming, yelling, growling, and the deputy and the many other patrons. Deputy asked the defendant what was going on, did not answer any questions. Was talking over the deputy's shoulder, saying he was going to beat somebody's ass. Defendant placed him, or the deputy placed him in handcuffs and put him in the back of the vehicle. Let's see, hold on. While en route to Lenawee County Jail, the defendant continued to kick the inside of the patrol car's doors. Deputy told him to stop kicking the doors and advised dispatch he was being combative and asked to have jail staff meet in the Sally Port for the deputy's arrival. At the jail, staff came out and took custody of the defendant. And this is obviously Mr. Krebs, the allegations that are in the police report. At the jail, staff came out and took custody of the defendant. He continued to be combative, non-cooperative. While in the Sally Port of the jail, he continued to kick the inside of the door, and deputy opened the back door to let him out. He started yelling and shouting obscenities. The defendant kicked the outer portion of the back door of the vehicle, and jail staff came out to take control of him. They escorted him into the receiving room, where he continued to be uncooperative. He was placed against the wall in an attempt to remove articles of clothing that he could not have in the jail. He refused to remove his shoes. So they removed his shoes for him, and he refused to stand up. He had to be picked up and carried into the holding cell. He continued to be combative and uncooperative. The defendant spit in Sergeant Molner's face at one point, and jail staff was eventually able to get him in belly chains. Okay, both rear damages of the vehicle were damaged. So let's look at the case law. All right, so there is People v. Foster, which is an unpublished opinion of 10/17/2006, Court of Appeals number 263091. The trial court did not err in scoring OB-19 of the sentencing offense for interference with the administration of justice, where the defendant was convicted of resisting and obstructing a police officer, as there is no statutory prohibition against scoring the conduct that is inherent in the offense itself. Let's see. Can't score a failure to, let's see. It also said you can correctly score the OB-19 for giving a false name to a police officer. Obviously, most of the case laws with regard to defendants trying to sway victims or other witnesses to change testimony or lying to police officers. 10 points under OB-19 was scored when defendant fled on foot after police ordered him to freeze. People v. Radcliffe 299 Mish Ave. So it's a good question, Mr. Daly, but it was scored because the offender used force or threat of force against another person or the property of another person to interfere with, attempt to interfere with, or that results in the interference of administration of justice or the rendering of emergency servers or services. So I am going to rule that it was properly scored, Mr. Daly. All right, so although you don't agree with that scoring, the calculation of guidelines would be then 12 to 24 months. And as the court is scoring OB-19, do you agree that's correct calculations?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Daly, is there anything you'd like to say on behalf of your client?
Yeah, when this happened, Mr. Krebs was in the middle of a real mental health crisis. This was reflected in several different arrests for resisting and obstructing, and some really bad behavior on his part. When you take a look at the tapes from how he treated the police, it was extremely offensive, and Mr. Krebs knows that. But since that time, Mr. Krebs has changed his life. He's changed his therapist, he's changed his medication. He knows that drugs cannot be a part of his life because it triggers mental illness. Without the drugs going on, without the alcohol going on, he works hard. He shows up to work every day and he's a pleasant individual to be with. And that's the individual we're at right now. He has went from a really rather bad spot where he needed substantial assistance. He's got that assistance. And right now, he feels remorse for his conduct. I watched the tape with him. I've listened to his explanations, and the explanations were just indicating his remorse for behaving like that. He knows what he did was wrong. He doesn't ever want to do that again. And he wants the opportunity to go on with his life and be able to complete this. Beyond that, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Mr. Krebs, I'm glad to hear all of those things. I know that you've had your struggles and you've always been working towards that goal. So is there anything you'd like to say on your own behalf, Mr. Krebs?
No, thank you.
All right. In determining the appropriate sentence in this case, the court has considered the seriousness of the offenses, your history, the principle of proportionality, the statutory penalty, the cost of confinement, the sentencing guidelines, the report and recommendation of the probation department, as well as what has been said upon the record at this hearing. The criteria and reasons for the sentences are the nature and gravity of the offenses, the discipline appropriate to its commission, deterrence against repetition by you and by others, the potential for reformation, vindication for the law, and the protection of society. It's a sentence of the court that you will be placed on probation for a period of 2 years on count 3 and count 4, which is assault and battery, because I can only do 2 years on a misdemeanor. And then on count 1 and count 2, assault of a prison employee, I'm going to place you on probation for a period of 3 years. During that term of probation, you're not to use or possess any alcoholic beverages. You're not to use any illegal controlled substances, including marijuana, unless you have a medical release for that. You must comply with all testing for alcohol and drugs, complete an assessment if they need one, take your medication as prescribed, complete all counseling intervention programs that you're currently involved in, as well as any you might be referred to, not to use any object as a weapon. You must submit to search of your person and property without need of a warrant if the field agent has reasonable cause to believe you have items which violate the conditions of your probation. There is $750 in court costs. There is a $60 DNA fee. There is a $30 per month supervision fee, $60 if we have to use a tether, $130 crime victim rights fee. There is state costs in the amount of $50 for both count 3 and 4. So that's a total of $100. And then on count 1 and 2, there is a $68 state cost on each count. And Ms. Holly, you're tucked away back there hiding. Is there anything else?
I think you did it.
Okay, all right. And then during your term of probation, you have to obey and comply with all the provisions in your articles of probation. Now, Mr. Krebs, you do have the right to appeal this sentence. We are going to mail to you at the address we've been provided. You're going to get an envelope from me, and in that envelope will be 3 copies of your notice of right to appellate review. And then one of the copies will be highlighted for you to initial and date just that you received it. There'll also be a self-addressed stamped envelope in there. So initial, date that, fold it up, put it in that envelope and mail it back to me. If you wish to appeal your sentence, you could also fill out that you wish to appeal it and put it in that envelope and mail it back to me. But you have 42 days to mail that form if you would, the other forms if you wish to appeal your sentence. All right.
I was promised only 2 years of probation, not 3 years.
Was it 2 years?
Yes.
That's fine. I'll reduce the 3 to 2 on those first 2 counts. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Krebs, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Daly, as always, thank
He
you.
needs to report to me
Oh, Mr. Krebs, when?
Tuesday between 8 and 10.
Mr. Krebs, you need to report to see Ms. Holly next Tuesday between 8 and 10, all right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Krebs.